Morning and good afternoon, partners, colleagues, friends. I'm Kevin Russell, the head of country and partner engagement, and have been given this wonderful honor of being MC or moderator for today. As we host the Post-SMM webinar, we thought it was really important to do it this time of the year to capture the momentum and the excitement that has been generated in Madrid. And as you can see from the title in the screen in front of you, it's turning outcomes into results, what countries and partners can do now. And I should actually say what parties and countries and partners have already been doing. So you're very welcome to the call. I just want to take you very quickly through the agenda and some of the outcomes that we would be trying to achieve here. So on to the next slide, please, James. In terms of the agenda, we have 90 minutes together, colleagues and friends. With the welcome and opening remarks from the government of Spain, we will have an overview of the SMM outcomes. We've been doing, of course, an evaluation of the event, and our chair, Patrick Moriarty, is joining us today to take us through that part of the agenda. And then we will have a little bit of an update on sustainable political will through accountability, results of the overview, what is happening in the MAM and the momentum generated within the SWA partnership. The bulk of the meeting will be a panel discussion because there's been so much excitement, so much momentum, and we really wanted to highlight a couple of things that are happening, not only to inspire, but also to appreciate the activities partners are taking. And we will put aside 20 minutes in this call for an audience Q&A, so be prepared with the questions, be prepared to engage, be prepared with your ideas. We're really, really keen to hear from you in those 20 minutes and ultimately with the closing and thanks. So with that said, one more slide from my end before we can really officially kickstart this. This webinar has been designed to highlight the key outcomes of the SMM. We all know it, but 6 weeks ago, it's always good to have a little bit of a refresher, including, of course, the expectations around the high-level leaders compact and proposed country-level follow-up actions. We will also be using this meeting to highlight examples of early action from certain countries and partners, also to inspire cross-learning and joint action. And lastly, it wouldn't be SWA if we didn't reinforce mutual accountability across the partnership, but ensure the spirit of collective action that continues beyond the SMM. It's always a pleasure to thank partners for not just the prep process where that collective action is visible, but also the engagements during the meeting and engagements beyond. So with that said, and without any further ado, it is a great honor to welcome once again from the government of Spain, Josefina Maistu, who's become a good friend of ours, to give us some opening remarks and kickstart the webinar. Over to you, Josefina.
Thank you very much. A great pleasure to be here again. Distinguished panelists, partners from governments, civil society, utilities, private sector, research institutions, and all participants. We would like to welcome you to this follow-up webinar on turning the 2025 Sectors Ministers Meeting outcomes into concrete results. Hosted in Madrid under Spain's government leadership and jointly convened by Sanitation and Water for All and UNICEF, as many of you know, the Sectors Ministers Meeting launched the High Levels Leaders Compact on Water Security and Resilience, what we call the Madrid Compact, which has been endorsed by over 30 countries and 28 organizations till today. So very good news so far. This landmark document is a commitment to climate resilience, water and sanitation services as human rights, one, and to breaking the silos by uniting policy pathways through mutual accountability and multi-stakeholder partnerships to close the SDG 6 gap. So what does this mean? Basically, the Madrid Compact recognizes a critical truth. Resilient water and sanitation services and water security cannot be separated from climate adaptation, and both demand a strong hold of government leadership. This is fundamental. Secondly, the breaking the silos means integrating policy pathways such as water and sanitation services, resource management, and national climate and development strategies that has been for so long separated in the water realm. The good news also is that the compact creates the conditions for the heads of states in different countries to champion water security as an engine of resilience. Uniting pathways means that now it is a business of the heads of states, and it can create jobs well-being and prosperity. Spain takes great pride on this momentum and thanks all who joined us in Madrid and those who supported national level engagement leading up to it. For us, the real work begins now. Having endorsed the compact, Spain is committed in its national policies to the 5 pathways: policy and institutional integrations, rights-based inclusive services, resilient systems, and greater sustainable financing and political accountability. Whilst our Spanish Development Cooperation Agency is working to embed these pathways internationally, from drought resilience in vulnerable regions to international support in partners countries. So we are working both nationally and internationally in implementing the compact. So we want to lead by example and call on governments counterparts to do the same. Those who endorse the compact to turn Madrid commitments into national action plans and do this reflecting it into the budgets and all the reforms. Those yet to join, please seize the momentum. Work with us to make water climate integration the global norm. The compact marks a watershed, the first high-level ministerial commitment agreed with stakeholders and civil society organizations that water security and resilience require integrated approaches. So let's keep the momentum. How can we do that? We need to support with this the heads of state initiatives to drive 2030 progress. The Madrid commitment is also a significant contribution on the road to the 2026 UN Water Conference in the United Arab Emirates, and especially to its potential tangible outcomes. Many of us have already agreed, so let's make it really one of the key outcomes of the conference itself. Spain stands ready to work with Sanitation and Water for All partnership, so the Madrid Compact features prominently as evidence of mainstream water climate sanitation policy. Together, let's convert Madrid political energy into measurable results for universal access, integrated water resources management, climate resilience, and a water secure future. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Josefina. And let's take some of that Madrid energy. Patrick, let me hand over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Kevin. And thank you again so much, Josefina. And, you know, I think really just what I said when we were together in Madrid, thank you to the government of Spain. And thank you to the government of Spain for showing at a moment when I think the multilateral system that so many of us believe in and have believed in for so long is under such unparalleled tension and strain. And when many traditional multilateralists are walking away from it, it was really inspiring to be hosted by a government that still believes in multilateralism and global solidarity and in climate change. So distinguished panelists, everyone on this call, all protocols observed. Yeah, let me start by again, as I've just said, expressing our deep appreciation to the government of Spain, and equally to UNICEF, our host of these SWA Secretariat and founding partner within our amazing partnership. Thank you both for your leadership and partnership. And thank you to all of you on the call who are with us in Madrid. Thank you. It was fantastic to see you all. It was really energizing. And at a time when I think we were all still in deep shock at the loss of our CEO, Katerina, I also think we all drew great strength from being together with each other. You know, the conversations, the commitments, the collaboration that were on display there reminded us of a fundamental truth, and that is the truth that underpins our partnership, which is that achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is only possible where we work together in an integrated way. And that's at its core is what systems leadership requires of all of us. Common vision, shared responsibility, aligned and collective actions, and mutual accountability. And so I'm delighted to take the opportunity to very briefly share with you some of the main outcomes that emerged from the SMM. So next slide, please. So, yeah, let's begin with the high-level Leaders Compact. As Josephina said, it's inspiring to see the momentum behind that. I'm calling you from the International Water Association's conference in Bangkok, Thailand, where I was presenting on the compact and encouraging other people to join. But to date, we have 29 governments, 28 organizations who've endorsed it. And it's more than a list of signatures. It's a signal of political will and a shared recognition that water security and resilience, as Josephina was saying, are foundational to development, to stability, and to prosperity. And it reflects a commitment to lead by example, to strengthen governance, and to work in partnership for measurable change. As you can see from the slide, we're making solid progress on existing partner commitments, as well as new commitments tabled by partners ahead of and during the meeting. Importantly, there was strong ministerial representation at the SMM, continue to demonstrate our member countries' commitments to the sector and to breaking down the silos that traditionally separate WASH and climate action. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I'm really excited to announce that the SMM report has now been launched. It's available on our website. It's available if you scan the QR code displayed on the slide. And I really encourage all of us to download it, to explore it. It doesn't just capture the outcomes, but also that collective energy that Kevin was referring to, the energy and direction of the SMM. It lays a great foundation for some of the work that we'll continue to do, particularly around the Heads of State initiative at COP and during the UN Water Conference processes that we're now coming into. Next slide, please. So as we look at what you'll find in the report, let me highlight 6 cross-cutting conclusions that came out clearly from the meeting. Areas that apply to everyone across our shared water, sanitation, and hygiene system. So, first, that integration is now a political issue, political mandate. And ministers emphasized that real integration requires structural governance reforms, modern laws, empowered institutions, and coordination across sectors, not just technical alignment. Second, that resilience must guide the entire water, sanitation, and hygiene ecosystem. We've got to build resilience into what we do. Climate risks need to shape our planning, our budgeting, and regulation. Resilience must become the organizing principle of water governance, not simply a slogan. Third, that sustainable finance depends on strong governance. Weak institutions create risk and inefficiency, while strong ones attract and sustain investment. Domestic finance remains the backbone of sector progress, with external finance playing a catalytic and complementary role. But it is all about domestic finance. It's all about states stepping up to the challenge. Next slide, please. So fourth cross-cutting point, leadership is transformative. It's the decisive factor. High-level political leader commitment paired with regulatory and financial continuity was repeatedly identified as essential to driving and sustaining reform. And I should say that all of these points are being echoed in the Congress that I'm in at the moment. And that, another 1,400 people from across the water and climate sector saying the same thing. These are very widely held points. The fifth, that equity and inclusion are non-negotiable. Prioritizing rural, underserved, and vulnerable populations is both a moral imperative and a determinant of system resilience. Efficiency without equity leads to exclusion and undermines long-term progress. And finally, data and information are core to progress. Real-time, reliable, and accessible data enables transparency, adaptive government, and smarter allocation of resources. We are living through the digital transformation, and it's the background of effective decision-making. I think these messages are all clear. The future of water, sanitation and hygiene depends on strong systems, accountable leadership, and coordinated collective action across all constituencies, and a tight and continued integration with climate discussions, and particularly resilience. The High-Level Leaders Compact and the Heads of State Initiative give us the political momentum and shared framework we need to drive forward this transformation. But really, we're counting on all of you to continue to build that momentum. If we move together with purpose and partnership, the commitments made at the SMM and beyond will translate into the progress that communities and countries expect from us. And I think, as I said in the closing session at Madrid, if we want to honor the legacy of our CEO, of Caterina de Albuquerque, we have to continue this work. And I know that in doing so, you will support Kevin Sitali, who's now confirmed as our acting CEO, and the whole Secretariat team, and each other in doing so. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It's a fantastic summary. And 6 points. I was just thinking about every single one of our constituency messages that were built during the SMM and how much of that was in the point that you're hearing it in Bangkok. And Sitali and I went to Morocco last week, and we heard exactly the same thing, in integration. So when the sector comes together on a nice single idea, I think that's where the energy and the force is. And really thank you for the way in which you present that. In addition to, of course, constituency messages, governments give us messages, much, much deeper messages, because they present country overviews. And it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Mr. James Dumpert, who is our Finance Systems and Accountability Coordinator, who has done a synopsis of all the government overviews. I won't take away your thunder, James. Let me hand over to you for the next 5 minutes. Over to you, James.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. And good day, everyone, partners, colleagues, friends. Thank you for joining us today. As ministers and partners, we came together in Madrid around a shared vision. One reflected in the Madrid Compact, which elevates water and sanitation as essential to climate resilience, human development, and equity. But as we all know, a compact is only as strong as the actions that follow. And that's where accountability really matters, not as a burden, but as a practical tool for delivery, alignment, and credibility. The mutual accountability mechanism, the MAM, as we call it, is how the partnership turns high-level dialogue into measurable progress. So it's an instrument we use to register, track, and refine the commitments that bring the compact and other commitments to life. What's unique about the MAM is that it's not limited to governments. It fosters shared responsibility across all partners. It gives ministers and stakeholders a clear line of sight between what was pledged here or pledged in Madrid and what is actually delivered on the ground. So in short, the MAM is the dashboard that keeps commitments front and center before, during, and after meetings like this. So let me share a quick snapshot of how countries and partners have already begun engaging in the MAM and what were the results from the SMM process. So the SMM process already fueled increased engagement in the mutual accountability mechanism, exactly what we were hoping to see. In the lead up to Madrid, more than 20 countries actively engaged with the MAM by reviewing, updating, and preparing new commitments. In total, we got 46 new commitments were tabled, along with 64 progress updates on commitments registered in prior years. That's a strong sign of political will, turning into operational focus. And the engagement goes beyond governments. In many countries, development partners, civil society, and national institutions work together to shape these commitments, a real demonstration of shared accountability in practice. As more countries engaged with the MAM during the SMM preparations, we didn't just see more participation, we saw a shift in the types of commitments that were being made. So what we see here is very encouraging. Governance and climate resilient water and sanitation were the most frequently cited themes, showing strong interest in strengthening institutional systems and long-term resilience. Sanitation, financing, and equity and inclusion also featured prominently. These reflect a clear desire to expand access while ensuring fairness and financial sustainability. And importantly, countries are increasingly taking interesting approaches, linking climate resilience, inclusion, governance, and financing within their commitments. This signals a maturing of the MAM as a strategic planning tool, not just a registry. This thematic diversity is exactly what the MAM is designed to support. It gives countries and partners a common platform to align commitments with the real world priorities and to track them over time. So as we move forward from the SMM, the MAM will remain a critical mechanism for turning ambition into accountability. It offers a shared space for governments and partners to strengthen collaboration, track delivery, and maintain momentum, not only for the SMM, but all the way through to the UN Water Conference and into 2030. To learn more about the MAM, you can please reach out to the tool and how to basically use the MAM tool to build momentum around commitments. Please feel free to reach out to me or your SWA secretary at Focal Point. So thank you very much for the time, and I look forward to hearing from you. Kevin, back to you.
Thank you so much, James, for that synopsis. And I think just to echo a little bit from Patrick, our dear late former CEO, Katerina, was always very keen to see that the MAM commitments had that political support and the ministerial support. And throughout the SMM process, there were a couple of new things, but one of the things we actually did was make sure that the country overviews prepared by governments highlighted the progress on the MAM, also registered the new commitments to ensure that connection that James has made between sort of the technical and the political world. And that's worked really well this time. Excellent. And a big thank you to everyone on this call for making that possible. And of course, the governments for leading in this process and presenting these very kind of consolidated overviews. We really appreciate it. It's not just breaking silos, as Josefina was talking about, between different sectors. Even within our own sector, we've had to ensure that those silos are broken so we come to others from a position of strength. So a big thank you to everybody. We will move at this point to the panel discussion. And I'm very pleased to share with you that at the moment we have 69 attendees. I understand in particular on the 11th of December, people are closing offices, making final payments or attending big conferences. Getting to this level is quite difficult. So I really appreciate you for joining us today. And we will have, of course, a very exciting panel to share with you. So, James, if you mind just sharing the next slide, I would like to introduce the panel before we kickstart. So from the government representatives, we have Mr. Jem Sering, who is the Executive Engineer at Water and Sanitation Division, Ministry of Infrastructure from Bhutan. And we're also joined by my colleague and brother, Abira Indusro, Senior Advisor to the Minister of Water and Energy in Ethiopia. This particular webinar, you may have noticed, doesn't have the little world map where you can pick languages because it's completely in English. So it's for the Anglophone part of Africa and for Asia. And of course, in light of that, we don't need additional translations. On to the next slide, James, these will be our two government panelists. We wanted to make sure that we have a representative from each of our constituencies to highlight the diversity and the strength of SWA as a multi-national. So we will be joined by Sareen Malik, Executive Secretary of ANU, and also Vice Chair of the Steering Committee of SWA, representing the constituency, Mr. Paul Deverell, Senior WASH Advisor, FCDO, representing the External Support Agency's constituency. There's Jimena Quiroz, Regulatory Specialist from Liz Water, representing our utilities and regulators. Nick Igwe, who you all know very well, is our program subcommittee chair on the steering committee, but also the global head of and Nigeria national coordinator for OpsWash, representing the private sector. And last but definitely not least, Alejandro Jimenez, WASH governance ex-group lead from IBL, representing our RNL constituency. I have a series of questions which have been sent to our panelists. And if you don't mind, James, going back to the 2 slides back, just so we don't have faces while we do this. We'll start off with our government colleagues, and they both get exactly the same question. But let's start off with Mr. Jem Sering from Bhutan. And Abira, you'll have exactly the same. So maybe you can come in straight after this. What motivated your to sign the High-Level Leaders Compact, and what concrete steps are you planning to take to implement your commitments? So, Mr. Schering. I think we may be having a bit of a sound problem while we try to sort that out. Abira, if you'd like to take the question, because it's similar.
Thank you very much. You hearing me well?
I can hear you well. Go ahead.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues from the SWA members. Once again, thank you for bringing us all together here. And my sincere appreciations as government of Ethiopia, for the government of Spain for hosting us during our stay in Spain, in Madrid. We had a really very lovely and successful deliberations of the sector ministers meeting. And it's good that Ethiopia is, one of the member states endorsing the High-Level Leaders Summit compact. Our deepest condolences really for the loss of, Katrina, our icon in the sector. And while we are, coming into, the SWA meetings, we always remember Katrina in our mind, and she will remember, really be remembered in our lifetime. Thank you for nominating, Ethiopia to represent, government constituencies in this session. With regard to the question, Kevin, you raised to us, I think for the High-Level Leaders Compact, we have been following up from the very beginning, and in the process of contributing ideas for this agenda to be pushed forward, as Ethiopia being, the largest country next to Nigeria with the highest level of population, and with the highest, demand in the wash sector, both in rural and urban settings. We are a country of more than 130 million people. So in terms of the national context and current existing situations in Ethiopia, being as a country in the Horn of Africa and affected by the climate change effects, Ethiopia is, really passing through multiple of complicated, scenarios of, doing some good progresses in the wash sector also, and other extreme facing with, climate, shocks and challenges, especially in the people living in the borderland areas and remote countryside areas. So Ethiopia, as a big country with the highest population, is supposed to do a lot in doing and delivering its commitments of national, regional, and global commitments. We have our own national targets. As a Ministry of Water and Energy, we are doing our level best to address the wash needs of the Ethiopian fellow citizens, both in rural and urban settings. So we have multiple of programs and projects under implementation, thanks to our bilaterals and multilaterals financing organizations, equally and supporting the sector for additional resourcing in the wash sector. But equally important is also government is resourcing from its own treasury sources, based on the understanding of leaving no one behind, and as a member states in the UN system, where all human beings do have the right to have access for clean water supply, improved sanitation, and decent hygiene services and sanitation facilities. So in that case, the demand is very high. The very reason for Ethiopia to have signing this High-Level Leaders Compact is that we really need this compact as a high-level advocacy tool, one, to influence the government itself, the federal, central government, regional government, the local authorities at its own context, to use as an advocacy tool. And we are currently, as Ethiopia, reviewing, almost finalized. Very luckily, it's a congratulations, Kevin. Our newly revised version of the National Water Policy is now in the hands of the Office of the Prime Minister for endorsement. So it is under discussion by Council of Ministers, and very soon it will be endorsed with few editorials, and then presented to the MPs, the National Parliament, for endorsement. So we are reviewing our national policy after 25 years of service with the oldest version of the national policy, water policy. So we really need this, high-level leaders compact for us to be able to influence the government as well as to mobilize additional resourcing. Ethiopia has its own WASH financing strategy, which has already been, developed some a year and a half ago. So for that WASH financing strategy, as Patrick, pointed out well to us earlier, the WASH financing strategy really needs to have a kind of high-level advocacy to like the high-level leaders compact for Ethiopia to uplift into the attention of the ministers and heads of organizations, heads of states to take into their agenda. As Ethiopians, again, we have the One Wash National Program, which we are known very well. The One Wash National Program, phase 3, is already developed, which is going to run for the next 15 years. And this development process has already been backed by UNICEF, FCDO, the bank, and other members of the CWA, financiers. So for us to be able to further continue, delivering our programs and projects in the One Wash, we need to have this high-level leaders compact for us to be able to deliver this. We have also, the national level WASH presidential compact, which has already passed through, consultative processes, and now it is finalized and to be presented for endorsement and signing. And this national level WASH presidential compact requires a kind of the very high level, broader, global size of the leaders summit compact, so that it will back up our national level local compact to be grounded and implemented among the different stakeholders of different constituencies, including line ministries of government, CSOs, development partners, the private sector, research institute, and CSOs as well. So for us to be able to move forward in the broader One Wash program, we really need to have this high-level, global, compact to be present, tabled down. And finally, we have also the Tsedu Ethiopia. Tsedu Ethiopia is, a compact which is championed by our Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, where the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Water and Energy has jointly prepared it, focusing on sanitation and hygiene. This, high-level Tsedu compact is focusing more on personal hygiene and environmental sanitation, a high-level bilateral ministerial compact, which is championed by the Prime Minister. And for this to continue to be implemented across the country in all the regions and rural and urban settings, we really need to have this high-level compact, and that is what we are currently really doing. The challenge we have is even, to have a reliable data source. And Patrick has already nailed it, that we need to have, a reliable, trusted, and sound monitoring and evaluation systems and MIS systems, so that our progress and our achievements could be traced by the GMP, estimate or the GLAS report. So the challenge we have at now is to have a reliable and sound MIS system, but really thanks to our Minister, His Excellency Dr. Habtamu Itafa, we are aggressively working. Some 15 days before, we have endorsed our monitoring, evaluation, and learning, framework within the ministry, and which is to be encompassing the broader WASH and water source management framework. And within that framework, we are working towards to have a reliable MIS system, including the WASH MIS system, so that not only the SWA partners or the Secretariat, but other partners could trace for transparency and accountability purpose. For all these initiatives we have in Ethiopia, we really need to have the high-level leaders compact, and Ethiopia has already fully endorsed it and has already notified as member of the countries who have already endorsed the high-level leaders compact. Back to you, Kevin. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you so much, Avira. Thank you for the energy you bring to this. I think for many of us who've been in the SWA partnership, you probably will know that Ethiopia was the first country to host the SMM outside of the United States. So this goes all the way back to 2016, and you have been pushing and driving us towards integration for at least 9 years. If I can share a story, and I hope I don't embarrass you, Abira, but we put out the call for signing of compacts, and within an hour, Ethiopia had already read it, reviewed it, taken it through the system, and they were the absolutely first country to come back and say, we endorse and sign the compact. So a big thank you, not just for driving the agenda, but for also signing on in such a rapid way when the time came for it to happen. So from Addis to Madrid, integration is getting stronger. At this point, let me see if we Jem and if we can hear your voice and put you on. So Jem from Bhutan, the floor is yours. Could we just check if the mic is working?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's great. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, SWA, for conducting this post-SMM meeting in Spain, and of course, I couldn't join in Spain, but I was very much involved in the pre that event activities, and even before that, when I was in the ministry, I was also fully involved with the SWA from the times of Mr. Siddhartha, and now with the Balwan. And I would like to, at the very start, would like to apologize, especially on the, right now the parliament session is going in the country, the winter session, and the minister has, informed. He called me to personally, join this session, and my director general, who has accompanied the minister to the Spain, also he is totally engaged with the day-long meeting today. So on behalf of that, behalf of them, I will be representing Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport, and especially I work in the Water and Sanitation Division under this department, and the very reason of our minister signing this high-level compact is very clear that Bhutan, although is a very small country with the population of around only 700,000 people, but that geographically we are located in a very high mountain, and we have our own lot of challenges especially in the water and sanitation infrastructure development, building everything. So if we look at the water or sanitation coverage of the country, we are very much almost say in terms of water we have 99.8 something coverage in the access in terms of accessibility, but in also by going by the safely managed, then we are also at the right now around 67%. So the particularly the very reason of signing this high level compact is to have Bhutan, by virtue of being the member of also the SDG. We have by 2030 we should be also having 100% both coverage of safely managed water and sanitation across the country, the citizen. So while doing so, we have also, being the small mountainous country, we have a lot of challenges. So although we also have our own level, country level programs, but having the member or support from SWA, we strongly believe that SWA has a very high, rich global coverage with networkings. So having SWA as our Bhutan's partner, we really see a good future in terms of boosting our level of confidence in achieving the water and sanitation, safely managed water and sanitation by 2030. And also having ministered the political commitment, especially in the water and sanitation, hygiene and climate, is very important. So that's why I think with the signing of the high level compact, I think this will add a lot of value to our achievement of WASH progress especially. So that's why, like, in terms of even ranging from policies, normally the policies, acts, whatever is that it mostly discussed at the cabinet level. So having the political will and support is very important. We feel it very important. And then also financing, what the very important area, especially in the finance area. Although we have country allocations like to the district level annually, but sometimes we need to also get support from agencies like SWA in to give us some punchline to say that hey, that Bhutan is, in terms of water and sanitation, where are we standing, and if what investment extra that we have to make to make to meet our target by the end of the SDG period. And more than anything, one of the important thing is, ma'am, that a mutual accountability mechanism. Not only that the minister and then the sector ministers that who was present in the Spain, the mutual accountability mechanism does not end only between the ministers who have already gathered in Spain, but even after having the ministers after having come back to their respective countries, they have also have to place the mutual accountability mechanism to all the agencies, the relevant agencies, especially working for WASH, to the district level, that what each partner should be taking the responsibility and taking the accountability. So that in that way, I think with lots of the high level of energy that we look forward to SWA. So I think this is just a first session after the ministerial meet, and with frequent meeting of such on such platform, I think we will have a very very good hopes, and then I think support, and then also have a very um, uh, what to say, strategic planning and then monitoring system that will come to monitor our projects, and then in achieving our progress going forward. So thank you very much, and I think I will also now, after having this attended to this meeting, then I will also further brief my DG and the minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jem. I think that was really excellent, and echoing the words of Avira. So from our governments, we see very clearly there's a demand and there's a need for us to work in a multilateral way to make that happen. And a big thank you to your minister and your DG who wanted to join us and unfortunately couldn't due to timing commitments. We fully understand in light of the timing of the year that's difficult, but we appreciate you taking this forward to them as well. We're having a few questions in the Q&A. We do encourage you to continue adding them there. There are also some questions coming up in the webinar chat. We are collating those into the Q&A. So at the point where we are finished with the panel presentations, we will have an opportunity to share those questions, of course, with panelists, and they will be able to answer them. But I would also recommend to the panelists that you have a quick look at the Q&A and, of course, the webinar chat in case there are questions directed to you. In particular, Mr. Endishaw, there are a couple of questions that are coming your way. At this point, I'm very delighted to introduce Mr. Paul Deverill from the UK government, the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office. Paul, as you probably also know, has up till recently been the chair of the High-Level Political Dialogue Working Group, which is the government of meetings like the SMM and a lot of the other work we do around the heads of state. We, of course, thank you, Paul, for your service to that particular group over many years. And in many ways, a kudos to you for such a successful SMM and for your contributions to it. But my question now to you is from the external support agency point of view. And it's how is your organization, in this case FCDO, contributing to the follow-up of the SMM outcomes, and what specific implementations you offer to countries moving forward. You can also feel free to expand that to what you think other ESAs should be doing, and not necessarily just your own organization. But over to you, Paul.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin. And firstly, I'd just like to say that I was co-chair of that group, and I'd also like to kind of reach out to Leslie Porries, who runs finance at WaterAid, and she now is continuing that leadership. And I think we're looking for another co-chair if anyone wants to volunteer. So what are we doing about this? Well, the most significant outcome in many respects is the Madrid, the Madrid Compact. And so you would have noticed the UK's flag is not there. And you could say, well, why? Why on earth is Paul Deverell talking about this when the UK hasn't signed it? We will, bear with us. We are reorganizing, rebudgeting, and just about everything else at the moment. And the people in the chain of command between me and a minister is somewhat distracted by this process. When the dust has settled, we will look for a good opportunity, and there are many coming up. I'll talk about that, and I believe we will sign. Let's see. But in the meantime, we might as well implement it anyway, and so this is what we're doing. So firstly, Jose, heads of state initiatives. We're continuing to support that globally and diplomatically in some countries and technically in others. What I think the big ticket item here is connect it with other initiatives like the World Bank Water Compacts. So there's no point badgering a president with two compacts delivered by one lady in a suit and then another guy in a suit on the same day. We might as well get together and get our thinking sorted out, practice some of the integration that Josefina was talking about, and discuss with the government the possibility of having one compact rather than two or three or whatever. So that's integration there. Also systems. So we in our own small way, but it may not be small in depending on the context, we're working with countries, with national governments to strengthen systems. That's been done, by the way, very successfully in one particular way, which is with UNICEF on climate change. That managed to generate proposals of over $1 billion for various climate funds, but also with some great NGOs, some of whom no doubt are here, working with those governments on systems. And that work needs to continue, and it needs to be long term, and it needs to be thought through. At the end of the day, though, it does actually need to result in visible change in terms of increasing access on the ground. The challenge of systems is to make sure that there is a direct kind of line of sight to change on the ground, and it doesn't just become a theoretical exercise. So that's what we're having to do there. And finally, on finance. Finance is hugely important. By the way, systems should always come before finance, because why finance something when it has a weak system? Lots of opportunities to do that. We have bid to run the theme 6, it's the investment in water or for water at the UN Water Conference. We may not get that. There are some extremely good proposals, I reckon, from many others. Whoever gets it will support them. Because again, integration. There's no point in saying country A is doing this, country B. We all need to work together on finance. And there's lots of opportunities there. But the ground of it, I think, as pointed out by Patrick Moriarty, is governance. Weak governance, weak finance. Get the governance right, and we can help the finance follow. A lot of that work, I think, from us will be through the World Bank as well. We do support a lot of the IDA that the World Bank uses, and the World Bank has got some really interesting plans working with its client governments in terms of its multi-phase programmatic approaches, which are really interesting. One other thing which I'd like to point out, did you see those slides earlier about integration and commitments? The top two trouble me. Only one commitment is for integration of WASH and education, and only one other commitment about WASH in healthcare facilities. Kudos to Abera, because it's integral to the One WASH national program in Ethiopia. We need to make this more obvious, more evident in our work, maybe in HOSI, whatever. But it's, why limit integration just to things which are of kind of just got water in it? What on earth are we doing to integrate with other sectors, including the health and education and presumably the food and nutrition sectors as well? Something to watch out for. Anyway, lots of other things we could talk about. I think I've run out of time. Have any questions, please do ask, although I have to leave in 10 minutes to facilitate a meeting between the good old GCF and UNICEF. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. And thank you, of course, for your efforts to get the UK to sign the compact. And I think what you inspire here is much bigger. Even if your country hasn't signed the compact, as you rightly say, we should implement it anyway. And so thank you so much for that. I do think it's right to point out that the lack of integration in terms of new commitments exists. It's something, when you sign the compact, we expect future commitments to be much more reflective of that integration. But what was, I think, maybe positive in the MAM slides was seeing for the first time that the updates and the new commitments on governance were higher than sanitation, which is very much our DNA. And I think that was a very positive change. But thanks again, Paul. I'm at this point going to welcome Sareen Malik, our SWA Steering Committee Vice Chair and also CSO Steering Committee member. Sareen, thanks for spending the time with us today. I understand that I interrupted some very important coffee plans, and so I do apologize for that. Having coffee with the rest of us is actually quite appreciated. My question is, what accountability mechanisms are most needed to ensure sustained follow-through on the SMM commitments? And of course, how can and how do CSOs help strengthen them? Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. No worries. Dave and I will find another date. Look, I think the SMM again was another reminder, or I would even say probably a stronger wake-up call as well to civil society in terms of reclaiming their position of and their function of oversight. Over the last 15 years, or even probably about a decade or so, we're just seeing civil society going in all kinds of directions and forgetting what their raison d'etre was, which was really ensuring that these accountability mechanisms, the commitments that are being made, and that the services themselves actually reach people.
Yes.
And we keep saying this, you know, at least I know the partners and members that are here. You take these commitments, you make these commitments, you have to go and implement them. Let us not come back again where we're still, if we were doing a traffic light system, we're still seeing red on most. Now, I like the example of Ethiopia. I do remember a couple of years ago where Ethiopia did talk about
is a little bit tricky. I think you may have to come a bit closer to the mic.
Sorry, now can you hear me?
That's much better. Thank you so much.
Yeah, much better. Sorry about that. And I remember Ethiopia was looking at its policy, and actually the policy cycle reviews the policy should be every 5 years. Congratulations to Ethiopia really for getting this policy together. And I like the way Anna has explained. It's going to the president for endorsement, but then it'll have to come down to the members of parliament for operationalization. And the second part of accountability and governance is legislation. There are no two ways about it. I always say policy is a nice suggestion. It cannot be taken to court. It cannot necessarily be enforced. There are only three ways of enforcing a policy. And you know this, Kevin, an administration recommendation, a ministerial decree, or a law. And so I think this is where civil society really needs to come in and make sure that all this is taking place. I think it was really great to see governance also take center stage. When I was looking at the areas, it is something that we've been talking about in the last 2 decades. We all have our deep issues of governance, and yet it is something that still requires quite a bit of work in a number of countries. In Africa, we've seen, yes, some countries, it took 15 years to get some of these sectors up and running. So this is, as Paul mentioned, I think long-term thinking, sustainability, resources, acknowledging that every actor has a role to play, in particular civil society, and ensuring that, you know, what is actually being done. So moving forward, I think it's pretty clear, at least for civil society on the continent, and also the discussions that we have with civil society from different regions, in terms of reposturing ourselves into that oversight role that we had, trying out good old traditional civil society work, social audits, supporting policies, supporting lawmaking, and also making sure that everyone is represented and no one is left behind. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Serena. Apologies that I think your network may have been a bit tricky. It might not have been the microphone, but we could definitely feel the passion and highlighting in particular the One Watch national program and the way in which it outlines this and the traditional role of CSOs to that oversight. I think Mr. Endish, of course, was pointing out really the important nature of the high-level compact as an advocacy tool. And of course, CSOs are those advocacy experts who play that role at all the multiple levels and make us, of course, not have to wait 15 years for the achievement of key goals and actions. So we look forward to hearing a little bit more from that. If there were any in particular bullet points, Serene, you'd like to put down, we might want to share that in the chat just because the network was quite weak. And I know that your ideas are always unbelievably amazing and we wouldn't want to miss something because of resolution. So at this point, let me switch over to another one of our panelists and we'll move to the private sector, to Dr. Nick Igwe, who I introduced earlier. Dr. Igwe, what specific private sector-led initiatives or partnerships could help translate SMM commitments into concrete and scalable results? And I'd like you to maybe focus this question at a regional and, of course, a country level. Over to you, Dr. Igwe.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, and thanks so much, everyone, for making our time to join. Let me first make a comment on the theme, turning outcomes into results, which is very, very important. But for us as private sector, I would like to say this. The private sector might not be the only solution, but there is no solution without the private sector. And why am I saying this? The private sector brings in quite a lot into the sector. Sustainability, efficiency, financing, and technology and innovation around climate adaptation and mitigation. How do we do this? There are different steps on how we can do this. But let me just even look at just one step on the financing. We have spoken in Madrid in terms of using PPP so models, through blended financing, tax credit schemes, blue bonds, green bonds, initiatives. But how do we come in as private sector at the country level and the regional level? We cannot do that if we don't sit on the table from the start. Sitting on the table from the start in terms of framing policies, regulatory strategies, having private sector on the table with the government or policy makers is very, very, very key. Because the private sector will need what I would call private sector friendly policies that will enable them to key into those 4 key areas that I mentioned: sustainability, efficiency, bringing in investment into the sector, and of course, technology and innovation. In doing this, I think what I have been happy since the sector minister meeting is seeing 29 countries, SWA member countries signing into the head of state initiative, the compact, which is very, very encouraging. And that simply means that what the private sector needs can now be achieved, because with political leadership and strengthening of systems, like I think Paul, Devereux, Kevin, everybody must have spoken about political leadership. That is all we need in the sector. And then what do we do as private sector in terms of making sure that our voices are heard and that we support the efforts of the government, and the development partners, and even the CSOs? We need to now partner with the government at the regional and the country level through the HOSI initiatives. And I am very, very glad that this is being initiated in Nigeria, in Ghana, and other countries at the moment, where the private sector will like, as part of our initiatives, to sit down with the government of each country, especially the SWA member countries, bringing businesses together, businesses that will key into those 4 areas that I mentioned: sustainability, financing, innovation, technology, and so on and so forth. Sitting down, with them and saying, yes, we can do that. In Nigeria, for example, we'll be able to bring in businesses, go to the Ministry of Water Resources, who happens to be the coordinating, ministry for Nigeria, and say that this is what the private sector, will be, to bring it. But initially, this would not, have, possible without the clear political leadership, which is what the HOSI initiative is all about. So from us as private sector, we need to now partner, looking at those 29 major countries that have signed the compact and seeing how we can support them by making sure that the policies are friendly to the private sector and making sure they understand that this is the time for private sector to support them. So this is the initiative that we have to bring in. Private sector partnering with head of states, with the ministries, with the government, and making sure that the key areas of support that we're bringing in will obviously support the sector and create the environment so that we need. Thank you so much, and over to you, Mr. Kevin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Igwe, and I thank you also. I think in the lead up to the SMM, the private sector develops a set of messages, and those messages, I understand, Dr. Igwe, have been very well received from the side of the partnership. They are, of course, reflective in the compact. They're reflective in the actions that we're taking forward. And I really want to welcome again the private sector's engagement and wanting a seat at the table, wanting to talk about sustainability, financing, innovation, and technology. It's very, very well appreciated. At this point, let me welcome another panelist, Mr. Alejandro Jimenez from IVL, from the Research and Learning constituency. And like the private sector, this is another group that presented messages. In fact, I don't know why I'm saying this, every group presented messages, but we really appreciate the particular constituency flavor everybody brought to their messages for the SMM. Mr. Jimenez, how can insights from recent research or innovations help countries and partners accelerate progress in water, sanitation, and resilience, and of course, inform practical actions following the 2025 SMM? The floor is yours, Alejandro.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us here. I think the Research and Learning constituency has been already putting some work in the preparation of the SMM, and there are some aspects here that I think could be useful to not to forget. I want to highlight the, in my perspective, very useful resource solutions papers that were developed within the constituency and with other stakeholders of other constituencies that were presented at each dialogue. And I think this constitutes quite a good evidence on what is happening at the country levels, what is the latest examples, what are emerging initiatives by countries and other stakeholders. So I would really recommend everyone to download them and use them because they are very useful for having the latest insights about the certain topics. Actually, something that has happened right after the SMM was at the COP, and there was this launch of the second edition of the definition of climate resilient water and sanitation services, together with a response framework, moving again forward in terms of how to, in this case, make more operational the climate resilient water and sanitation services concept, and how countries and partners can work together to make that real. So I would also want to highlight that piece of work as quite important to move the agenda forward. Then, of course, I think that we have seen that there are new commitments have been presented. There are country reviews that some countries presented as well. And of course, we have the high-level compact of Madrid, and then which are the countries that have signed up for that. And of course, these elements together give a lot of information to the constituency, and then where the constituency can help and can support countries depending on their commitments, on how they have seen in the reviews weak points. There has been a quick analysis by James previously presenting where are the commitments and what areas the countries are prioritizing, mainly governance, finance. He has mentioned that. So then how the research and learning partners can support the countries on moving those agenda forward. And then I wouldn't want to forget that, of course, all this will happen mainly through the engagement at the country level. And then we have the mutual accountability mechanism platforms. We have sector stakeholder platforms, and that is where I think the constituency partners and other partners from other constituencies should meet and work together to see how we make these commitments real, how in the countries that have signed up for the head of states initiative, how we make those very high level political commitments turn into something practical, and at the end improving the services for everyone at the country. So those would be my few points, and thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for that. That's really excellent. And again, for highlighting the value of the resource papers. We're all very concerned, of course, about accountability. And quite honestly, one can't achieve accountability if there isn't a degree of transparency. And that transparency requires information. It requires information that's quality, credible, that is shared. And we really appreciate the work of the RNL constituency in terms of making sure that information increases transparency and allows us to get into these accountability processes. And we look forward to further engagement. And last but definitely not least, from our utility and regulator constituency, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Ms. Jimena Quiroz from Water. Ms. Quiroz, from your utilities and regulatory perspective, what do you think, what were the key takeaways from the SMM? And how should these insights guide regional priorities and action in the coming months? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation. As Kevin said, I'm speaking from Water, an NGO that works as a think tank on water governance and regulation. We work closely with regulators, so my comments today come very much from that perspective. First one, of the clearest message from the ministerial meeting was how much the sector needs better alignment. Because when policies pull in different directions, it creates uncertainty for investment planning, tariffs, and even performance assessment. So from the work we have done in different countries, we have seen that alignment is not the whole answer, but it does give the sector a clearer and more predictable framework. We think that the first step isn't creating a big committee that never works. It's identifying one shared problem that affects everyone and using that to bring them together. For example, water source vulnerability or throw impacts or major service interruptions. So we think that they can choose one problem, invite the ministry, the regulator, and utilities, review the same information together, and agree on one small joint action. For example, we have Panama that began with a technical roundtable on service interruptions, just one problem. Another example is Uruguay that brings the utility and URSEA, the regulator, together mainly around shared indicators. And with that, the meeting places strong also emphasizes on better data and using it well. This commitment highlights the need to improve how information is gathered and monitored. And a practical first step, we think that is improving the information system, knowing what data is available, what it's missing, and how to make it reliable. Without that, we think that regulation becomes guesswork. We have the example in Honduras that started with only continuity, quality, and energy indicators. Also, we have the regulator in Portugal, ERSAR, that began years ago with the limit set before building a full national database. Now they use sunshine regulation that publicly comparing utilities based on performance. Another example we have in Peru, SUNAS, that is improving monitoring through a water monitoring center called Camillaco to better understand what is happening in water sources and how climate risks are evolving. Third, the climate risk to be part of how we plan and regulate service. It's no longer optional. In practice, this means checking whether existing frameworks allow that investment that climate adaptation requires. So providers need to look at their systems with a climate lens and use a mix of traditional and nature-based solutions. And also regulators need to create the space for that, ensuring that frameworks support these decisions and help utilities prepare for the realities they are already facing. And four, this link directly to financing, also starting with knowing the real costs. Regulators and utilities needs a shared view of the basics, what it really costs to run the service, what climate adaptation adds, and how all of this is being paid off through tariffs, public funds, or external support. And finally, the Madrid commitment highlights the importance of political leadership and mutual responsibility. So regular reporting and aligning national monitoring systems was agreed to create stability. So looking ahead, utilities and regulators will need to keep the momentum alive, as you said, coordinating better across institutions, grounding decisions in solid information, aligning actions with the strategic goals, and making sure climate risk and reflected in planning and standards. So just to finalize, a first key step is to move from high-level commitments that we have already to simple, practical mechanisms that countries can actually use. As I said, national action plans linked to clear indicators could be a good example. Stronger institutional coordination and regular reviews through the SWAS mutual accountability mechanisms all help translate the SMM recommendations into per-national steps. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jimena. I think that's really, really excellent. And I think that thank you again for highlighting the points around data and for sharing these new examples from Panama. I think that's quite an exciting one for us to look into and elsewhere. And again, I think highlighting the point about needing a simple and practical mechanism. As I reflect through the panel, I feel like all of you wrote the report, because the 6 points that were highlighted by Patrick at the beginning of this webinar have been strongly emphasized through each of the inputs we got. And I really appreciate the alignment. Even though we were not all writing the report together, we are very much aligned on ideas. And I'll do a proper summary towards the end. This is the exciting part of the webinar, where we open the floor to engagement with all of the participants on the call. And again, a big thank you for everybody who's joined us today. There are a couple of questions that have come in through the Q&A, so I think we'll probably deal with those first. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We do have the ability to allow you to speak if you'd like to make a verbal input. But in the meanwhile, let's start off with the Q&A. And I think panelists have been looking at these as we go along. So if any of the panelists would like to speak, they could do so too. But maybe I should start off with a question for you, Mr. Abira. There's a question on the chat about, you have mentioned the new 5-year One Wash program, and I understand supporting self-supply, including HWTS, is a priority in that program. Could you explain a bit more about what that means in practice? So over to you, Abira.
Thank you, Kevin, once again. Thank you, colleagues, for sharing ideas and very constructive, discussions we are having now. With regard to, taking into account of the private sector engagement in the upcoming 5 years program, yes, the private sectors are properly, situated in the newly revised version of the policy, as well as the long-term One Wash Phase 3 program, because Ethiopia has, a very complex type of, climatic, weathers, including from the highlands to the lowlands, agrarians and pastoralists. So a mix of different, communities and cultures. So in that case, we have a lot of, places where the sector could apply for the private sector engagement. So at small scale, medium scale, and large scale investment sector. So the private sectors and self-supply technologies are well, articulated in the One Wash Phase 3. But as we know very well from our practical learning outcomes in the last couple of decades or couple of years, these self-supply technologies are low-techs, which we could only be applying for any reliable source of technologies and the very shallow ground level water availability areas, like in the southern part of Ethiopia, where Hink himself knows it very well. He has been in Awasa, in Sidama, in southern region. So in that area, in part of Amhara region, in part of Oromia region, we will definitely be applying for self-supply in the phase 3. But I have some questions before that, in case if I should respond to that, Kevin, with your permission, or
please go ahead. To all the questions you've received, please go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have the first question about how much of the national budget is allocated for WASH, water supply and sanitation, the role of the legislator to ensure budget availability, as well as how this approved budget is to be delivered for beneficiaries based on demand-based approach. So in terms of the amount of budget, so far we have nearly 5% of the national budget. But the very interesting part of it is that we, as a Ministry of Water and Energy, could trace our own share of budget. But as you know, the context in Ethiopia, we have the One Wash National Program, whereby the Minister of Health, Minister of Education, and even Minister of Women and Children Affairs are part of it, and the Minister of Finance too. So we all are members of the One Wash National Program Steering Committee under the chairmanship of the Ministry of Water and Energy. So those ministries, line technical ministries, do have their own share of budget to be allocated for WASH and aggregated as a report. So we have so far nearly 5% of the national budget, but with significant increase. And as I said earlier, the problem for proper tracing of the trend analysis, showing the trend analysis on the budget increment, is the lack of the MI system. And with regard to the role of the legislator, we have the standing committees from the national parliament who are line managing and supervising the WASH ministries. We call it the name of the standing committee, Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Lowland Development. So those standing committees in the national parliament are the one who are directly supervising, monitoring, and supporting the ministry, the WASH sector in the ministry. So they are working very closely with us, and they do have their own regular, meetings and even supervision programs with our ministry, and we share agendas and ideas for that standing committee to take into the attention of the bigger, high-level national parliament for discussion for budget approvals. In terms of, addressing and responding to the WASH needs based on demand-based approach, of course, the budget is calculated based on its own, parameters. We have the national budget allocation parameters approved by the national parliament, and depending on the size of the programs and the projects, those budgets are either on hold by the federal ministries or cascaded to the regional governments for implementation purpose. So it all depends on the population and the size of the region. The budget allocation is based on size of the population, size of the region, as well as the status of the WASH coverage in that particular region or intervention zones and waradas or counties. So we took into account of the needs and the current status of the WASH coverage in that area, both for urban and rural settings. So the issue of equity is properly considered in budget allocation to respond to the WASH needs of the beneficiaries in the grassroots level. Back to you, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abir. I think that's absolutely brilliant. We do have colleagues in the Q&A. There's a tab for answered questions. So just to highlight, there was a question around where could we find the solutions paper, which Alejandro had brought attention to. There's a link in that particular answer, which would allow you to go straight to the website to get it. There was also another question that has been answered, and this was from Dr. George Chima. I'm going to ask Serene, hopefully your network works this time, Serene. But the issue of engagement and accountability is always contentious in some countries due to high levels of corruption. So what have others done, if there are any case studies, to ensure the barriers to provide checks and balances are removed? Serene, would you like to have a go at that answer? And if the network's a problem, I can always read your answer from the chat. Okay, maybe not possible technology. So the answer that Serene had written was engaging with SAIs. I really think CSOs need to build these audit type of capacities to work with the sector. SAIs and the general public see the work TISA did last week. So I think this is very specific to a Kenya example, but they audited public procurement in Kenya. And I think that's quite important. The losses are staggering, but getting the whole country's attention. So they did this with the Auditor General's office, but with communities as well. There have been, of course, a few questions to us about how do we institutionalize the outcomes? What are the kind of very practical activities? So do keep an eye on the answered questions in that on that front. Dr. Igwe, if I can turn the attention to you, there's a very specific question for you. And you have rightly mentioned the private sector engagement, but some years ago, the president of IWA mentioned that we need to train 3 million practitioners to reach SDG 6. And that training is the role of governments currently. Would you agree? And if so, what suggestions do you have to scale up investments in training, or how could the private sector be involved in this capacity development demand? Over to you, Dr. Igwe.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a very wonderful question, because we do have issues around capacities building. So we have, as private sector, structured out training around capacity building, training around climate resilient infrastructural implementation and strategies, training on sustainability, and of course the most important one is WASH entrepreneurship training. This can actually be funded by the private sector indirectly. Remember, we have lots of private sector organizations who are willing to, as part of their CSR, do something. So that can also come in terms of CSR. We can also look into what we are doing right now in Nigeria and other countries, water stewardship. But the most important is that funding is coming. And of course, if we feel that the key areas of intervention by the private sector is training in these particular areas, that I've mentioned, it's also possible to key into those areas and see how funds can be leveraged from the private sector into those training areas. But most importantly, the government should also see it as their own area as well, because all what we are talking about now is supporting the government, and the government not to stay alone or stand alone in bridging all the gaps that we have. So we can also see how we can blend funding, financing in terms of the government also bringing in, and the private sector also bringing in. Private sector can bring in the training aspect of it. The government can also bring in funding. We can also bring in funding as well from the CSR point of view and others. So it is very, very important. It is also very, very possible. But most importantly, without training, without people even understanding critical issues around climate mitigation and adaptation, we will go around in circles without getting anywhere. So training is very, very, very key. And again, when I say WASH entrepreneurship, training, letting entrepreneurs know that there are opportunities for them to key into WASH, sector, where they can also invest a little bit of, money and make some very good return on their investment. But they need training around there as well, that the private sector will be able to take holistically and do that without even the involvement of the government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Igwe. I think that's really fantastic. I'm always fascinated when one travels around Africa that it's very difficult sometimes for the government to get a car and drive out to some far remote place. But if you go to some far remote place, there's always a beer truck or a Coca-Cola truck going through the dirt road. And so in addition to, I think, financing, the private sector presents an opportunity through companies to reach places where otherwise it would be quite difficult for the state to reach, because there's no commercial activity. And I think the point about equity and inclusion that has been raised in the SMM report is an area where the private sector, using its scale, using its reach, could not only provide finance for training, but also make sure we get quite far with this. So thank you so much for that. There are a couple of questions that have come that may be better answered by SWA in terms of quite important things around how we connect to the UN Water Conference. There was a question from Dr. Atta Benson around whether partners, there's a national level kind of compact partners could sign. Let me just take that for now. And the Madrid Compact is available for signature by governments and by non-government partners. So if your particular agency would like to sign and endorse and be part of the implementation of the integration agenda, you're very welcome to do so. That door is open. I think we mentioned earlier, 30 governments and about 28 development partners, development organizations have signed the compact. So there isn't a specific kind of national level Madrid Compact. There's a sole one integrated Madrid Compact that we're all very welcome to join. In terms of the implications of the SMM for the UN Water Conference, without a doubt, the SWA Secretariat will be engaged in various processes. I think you would have heard Mr. Devil earlier speaking about the UK government wanting to co-chair a particular element of it. But ultimately, we would be highlighting and promoting the work of partners. And so the more we do to implement and create an evidence of the impact of the high-level compact, the easier it is to bring the high-level compact, the Madrid Compact, into the UN water process, because the compact itself has such strong principles that they could apply across any one of the 6 interactive dialogue threads. But we will, of course, keep you updated through our social media and through a range of other things around very specific activities that are being taken. I think before we continue, there was one point that Serene would have shared with us because the network was a bit tricky. She wanted to give an example of CSO intervention in the Heads of State initiative being accepted as a means of implementation of the Africa Water Vision policy. So this is the new vision policy on the continent that applies, of course, to all 54 countries. It will be launched around 2025 at the AU Summit. And HOSI is now being placed, this is the Heads of State initiative, as a means of implementing that water vision. Now, CSOs have been pushing within the Africa group to make sure that that is accepted. And we'll obviously see countries conduct reviews to align their programs to the Heads of State initiative and, of course, to the Madrid Compact by extension. So in various, I think, continental platforms, when we get to the point, how do we institutionalize? We're not just doing this at a partner level within SWA, but of course, we're doing it at a regional, continental, and other level. At this point, colleagues, I would like to maybe open the floor again to our panel. There are at least 2-3 panelists who have, well, 2 panelists, Alejandro and Jimena, who may have not received a very direct question, but any of your reflections at this point before we close off the meeting. Alejandro and Jimena, if there's anything you'd like to add to the questions you've seen in the chat.
Yes. From my side, I saw a question with Shah Nasir. With how, I want to give some a comment. So we think the way to turn these SMM outcomes into practical action is to anchor them in the system that regulators and service providers already use. So that means aligning them with the priorities and tools that already in the national plans, focusing on a small set of clear indicators and tracking progress through this mutual accountability process that you will lead. So at least Water, we support this mainly through the WaterGov, that is a process that we developed with the IDB support to scan regulatory frameworks and pinpoint what is working, what needs improvement, and where coordination can be strengthening. So this could give regulators and governments a solid starting point for refining their action plans, aligning institutions, and reinforcing the monitoring systems that track or that could track this progress. Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that response, Jimena. I think, Dr. Igwe, we may be coming your way to get a bit of training support so that people know how to connect their work into these systems that regulators are using. I think this is a really good proposal. Alejandro, any last thoughts on your side before I formally close off?
Yeah, thank you. No, I just wanted to reinforce the point that was made in the chat about capacity building, right? And that's something that comes across the board and where all constituencies are involved, no? From research and learning, of course, but also from other stakeholders, and then just to make this collective call for us to invest in developing capacities collectively on the issues that are more pressing, no? From climate resilience to systems perspectives, etc. Right? So just to leave that point there. Over.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alejandro. We're exactly on time, colleagues. So I'm going to do a very, very quick thank you to the team behind putting this webinar together. The road ahead for us is quite clear. The momentum behind the Heads of State initiative was very evident in Madrid. The high-level leaders compact is adding to that momentum and becoming a concrete step towards aligning national water, sanitation, and climate efforts. And of course, the momentum generated from this allows countries to position and showcase concrete progress we make within the Madrid Compact to deepen that collective action on water security and resilience. So we've definitely got a bit of an energy shot in Madrid. We are continuing that energy with all your contributions, and a big thank you again to the panel, to everybody who's put this webinar together. There will be, of course, another webinar if you'd like to hear the perspectives of the Latin America region. You're very welcome to join that particular webinar later. There will be interpretation services, and of course, there's always a different set of perspectives. We will, of course, put this on the website and elsewhere. If we don't see you between now and the beginning of the new year, wishing you a very fantastic festive season, a rest period with your families if you are taking some rest, and of course, a prosperous and looking forward to 2026 when we all work very well together and continue the spirit of Madrid and the work we're doing. Gracias, thank you, merci, obrigado.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
For the sessions.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin, for hosting. Thank you all for listening to you.